the museum of the future is still a bit of a mystery.
It's not this massive skyscraper. Probably one of the largest Revit models I think ever constructed.
How involved is His Highness and his direct team with the approvals of the project?
Focal point for the nation.
This would leave legacy for future projects in Dubai as well to follow.
So yeah, we'll actually be the first LEED Platinum museum building in the entire Middle East.
Lath, you run one of the most iconic projects in Dubai, but for many, the Museum of the Future is still a bit of a mystery. Can you maybe explain what the museum is?
Sure, yes, it's clearly one of the most noticeable construction projects in a city filled with construction projects, but everyone notices the building. So really what most people don't realize is it is truly a museum about how we will live in the future. So the Museum of the Future is about projecting ourselves 30, 40, 50 years into the future and looking at how we will live in a world that's been fairly radically changed by climate, by technology, by population, immigration, all of these things, and we really want to examine how do people live at different scales. So from a more global scale to a kind of ecosystem scale to then personally how will we live and how will our health and wellness be impacted by those changes.
That's really interesting. I think I'll be one of your first visitors in 2020 when you guys are open. What can we expect? I mean, is it a place that I'd like to visit with my family, with my kids? Who's your target audience and what can they see there?
Absolutely. So we are targeting the broadest possible audience. So this is a fantastic place for people that are maybe coming here on business to come and visit and see, but also families to come. Tourists are coming from all over the world. We're expecting to invite everyone in. We'll have an entire floor of the building dedicated to young children's experiences. Nice. On the same topic areas, but just tailored to a younger audience. And we really hope that people locally here in the Dubai area can come on a regular basis and use that space, as well as the tourists and others that come in. But the intent is to be for everyone.
That's amazing. One of the most distinctive features of the building is obviously its architectural design. I mean, you know, anyone passing along it on Sheikh Zayed Road is bound to be drawn to that organic shape or structure taking shape. What do you brief your designer in this case? What do you tell them to get such an iconic design?
Sure, I mean, it really is a striking building in part because of the scale. It's not this massive skyscraper, right? And so it's surrounded by much larger buildings, but yet it has, I would say, more of a center of gravity than any of the buildings in the area, which is really incredible. And I think that that's a testament to a very unique design brief, which was not to build something with any preconceptions about, you know, what it needed to be as far as the siting, the dimensions of it, the height. It was wide open, the competition. So it was really asking architects from all over the world to bring their most creative, innovative, kind of craziest ideas to the project. And Sean Killa from Killa Design, who's a local architect, interestingly. And it was really looking towards the future, but also it was looking at the history and the culture of the area. So, you know, with the Arabic calligraphy inscribed all over the facade of the building, clearly has a connection back to its roots being here in the Gulf region. And the interiors of the space as well have many nods to that history and culture.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the facade, and it's certainly one of the incredible features of the building as well, especially with the Arabic calligraphy by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed. Can you maybe speak about the technologies that were used to get to that facade? Because you know, I know construction was not mature enough, you know, to get to that vision.
Sure. So, I mean, the building is so unique, so complex, that it was, I would say, maybe a little ahead of its time. Yes. I think the technology, you know, as the building has progressed, the technology has kind of caught up to the building. So that's where we're at now, in that we're better integrated with the technology, which is somewhat fitting for a museum of the future. It was just maybe a little bit too far into the future. Every time I see one of those panels, it's hard, I think, for people who haven't been up close to one to see the complexity of an individual panel. So each panel, you know, is driven by the 3D modeling of the building itself. So the entire building has been modeled in 3D. The whole thing is in Revit. Probably one of the largest Revit models I think ever constructed, is what I understand. And so the fabrication of each panel is driven by the model directly, because each panel is this incredibly complex curve. So it's, you know, curved in pretty much every dimension. It's like if you took an egg and you kind of cracked it into a bunch of pieces. But then each panel, you know, has an internal ribbing structure. It has the kind of the main structure of the panel, which is a composite, and then a dimpled and laser cut stainless steel skin, which you don't see until you get up close, the dimension in the skin itself. And then the glazing that's also embedded in it, and the LED lighting that's embedded around the glazing. So just when you look at how many layers and the complexity of each panel, it's a little mind-blowing, honestly, to see. And then now they're being installed and fitted up to each other. And in a seamless way, almost.
It certainly is amazing, and just to think that there are nearly 900 of those panels. It's
over 1,000, actually.
Over 1,000.
Over 1,000
wow, that's momentous work.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, Lath, the standout structure, we have got a podium of 3 levels and then a building of 7 levels. Can you maybe share a bit of the functions of each of the levels?
The building itself, which represents humans' ingenuity and creativity, and that's where all the exhibitions will be housed. And the void represents the future. So that was Sean's concept for the different pieces of the building. And in these levels, we'll have really the visitor experience starts on the 5th floor, which is right about here. So the 5th floor is where people will come up in an incredible sort of media-rich experience, I will say. I'm not going to say a whole lot more to completely give it away, but we'll transport people to that 5th floor, and then the exhibitions really fit in this whole part of the building here. So they'll travel through these really immersive future exhibitions, down 5th floor, 4th floor, 3rd floor, and then onto the 2nd floor, which has this kind of incredible space where you've got the calligraphy coming over your head, and so what was the walls now becomes the ceiling, and the light spilling in. On that floor, we'll have more current and near future technologies on display. So people will be able to see kind of what's coming really soon, what they might be able to access very soon in technology, rather than in these floors where we're looking really 30 and 40 years out in the future. And then the level below it, down on 1, is where we have our children's exhibition, so an entire floor dedicated to that. And then back down into that mound, we have retail space, we have a cafe, we have a fairly large auditorium where we can do a lot of fantastic programming there as well.
So, Lath being a very monumental project with high-profile dignitaries as stakeholders, how do you manage communication and approvals with them?
One of the things that's been really useful for us is because we're designing everything in 3D, the ability to do visualizations and 3D fly-throughs that show everyone up to His Highness exactly what the project is going to look like. So it's not a matter of still images and saying, well, imagine it's kind of like this. It's more of a matter of actually taking them through the spaces and seeing what the content will be in a very dynamic way. And being able to do that fairly seamlessly because we're always evolving those models. They're always available to work off of. And we're continuing that practice now through the exhibition design. So as we're designing these immersive experiences in the exhibitions, we also can visualize those in 3D.
And how involved is His Highness and his direct team with the approvals of the project?
So the impetus for the project really came from His Highness. After the World Government Summit, immersive experiences that DFF created, he had the vision of, well, let's do a real museum that's a permanent part of Dubai and actually a focal point for the nation. So that's really what's been driving the project, is that vision that he had, and we've been carrying that out. And what's been amazing, I think, for people that are not in the government is that it's been so incredibly seamless, and it's been such a great collaboration and so kind of easy in a sense. And the government's been pushing very hard to make things more agile, more flexible, much more collaborative in doing projects like this, and we've really benefited from that. It's probably been one of the most streamlined approval processes and projects in general that I've been involved with in my career.
I'm sure that this complexity generated unique challenges. Can you maybe speak about some unique technologies that were used there to overcome those challenges?
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned, this is a project where we committed to BIM from the beginning, and going all the way up to level 500 throughout the entire process. And this is not something I think that's normally done, particularly on a building this complex, but it's proven to be essential. I just walked through the site the other day, and when you look at particularly the MEP integration, because nothing is flat, nothing is straight, right? There's no square corner hardly in the building. And so when you think about how you have to integrate all the mechanical systems and things into that space, I don't know how you would do it without doing it all in 3D. It's really essential. And then even on site, contractors using that 3D model, walking around with their smartphones and things, and pulling this up and looking at, okay, how do these things integrate? Right now, there's curved panels also inscribed with calligraphy in the atrium space. Massive kind of domed atrium. Every one of those panels also three-dimensionally curved, has to be perfectly fitted up and positioned in the space. And so being able to use that 3D model and using the layout to figure out how each one of those perfectly fits in there, I don't see how you would do it any other way, frankly.
I think this is, this would leave legacy for future projects in Dubai as well to follow.
No, absolutely. I think this is, if we can do this building using, BIM and using Revit and using these technologies and to do it successfully in this complex of a building, why wouldn't you do this on every building?
You're right. You're absolutely right. Sustainability is becoming more of a big topic in the United Arab Emirates, and I know that the Museum of the Future will be a LEED Platinum certified building. Can you maybe speak about the differences between the construction of the Museum of the Future versus other buildings in Dubai now?
Sure. So yeah, we'll actually be the first LEED Platinum museum building in the entire Middle East. So this is quite a milestone. I've only done one other platinum project. They're not easy to do. There's a lot that's involved in it, and I'm really impressed that they've been able to get to that point with this. And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, there's a lot with the building envelope itself. In this case, I think there's over 30,000 sensors embedded within the building for building management systems. So that's a huge aspect of it. So we can very tightly control the interior climate within the building. But then we're also doing things like extensive electric vehicle charging in both parking garages, bicycle parking. We have a 250-meter long tunnel connecting to the metro, so yes, people can come on the metro to the museum through that way. So we're really doing a lot of that. And then one of the things I didn't even realize until recently is we have an entire off-site solar farm that's providing 400 kilowatt hours of electricity, or 4,000, kilowatt hours of electricity to the building. So a lot of our energy needs are going to be met by that off-site solar array. So while you might not see panels on the building itself because of the shape, just about a block away we have that solar array already installed. So there's a lot of really important, I think, features that are all coming together for sustainability. And we're also carrying that through to our restaurants and cafes in the museum. So we're looking at no single-use plastics, for instance. We're looking at lab culture meats potentially, or insect-based foods and things in the cafes to really carry that theme forward of sustainability and how we might live in the future.
Nice. I'm really intrigued about your role. Next year, you're opening one of the most iconic museums in the world. What's a typical day look like for you, if there's such a thing as typical?
Sure. I mean, it's the interesting thing about directing a museum of this scale is how many different things you have to think about in a given day. So my role is really trying to keep everyone moving in a coordinated way on everything from developing entire restaurant concepts to looking at our retail space, looking at all the exhibitions, the programming of it, and then the building itself, and making sure we get the building completed, right? So there's so many different aspects, but my job is really to make sure they're all coordinated, all moving in the same direction, all on mission for the institution. And right now that also means hiring staff. So we're staffing up before the opening as well, and making sure we have all of the services that we need lined up for the museum to open on schedule.
Perfect. Lath Carlson, thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the first episode of Industry Spectrum, where we hear from innovators in the industry about projects that are shaping the landscape of the region.